I'm going to show you the most delicious versions of these three classic brunch dishes. The perfect frittata is one of the few things in life that rewards laziness. I have two words for you: large curds. That means you don't have to stir it. I'm gonna start by cracking 5 eggs into a bowl. You really wanna match the amount of eggs you're using to the size of your pan. My pan is about 5.5 inches, so I'm gonna go with 5 eggs. I like to season each yolk individually with salt. It gives me the confidence that I'm adding the right amount of salt. It's a super useful trick. With a fork, beat the eggs thoroughly. I always use a fork to beat eggs. Whisks add air, and while some say a frittata should incorporate air, I still find that the fork gives me a far better result. I'm adding roasted mushrooms and kale, some sliced chili, and freshly grated Parmesan cheese. The beautiful thing about a frittata is that you can put anything you want into it. There are no rules. When I was thinking about a delicious frittata, this is what came to mind. I've had this cast iron pan in a 450-degree oven for about 10 minutes. I'm adding a healthy pour of extra virgin olive oil, immediately followed by the egg mixture. And this is the key to a great frittata. Stir it exactly 3 times in the pattern of an X. This is gonna keep the egg curds large, which will allow the frittata to rise slightly and suspend all of the delicious things you're gonna add into it. And now it just has to quickly go right back in the oven for about 5 minutes. You'll know it's done because it's gonna look delicious. And I always finish my frittatas with some extra virgin olive oil and crunchy sea salt. Next up is a delicious hash. I'm gonna slice these fingerling potatoes and put them into a pot with cold water, thyme, crushed garlic, and a tablespoon of salt. And then I'm gonna bring them to a heavy boil until they were just fork tender, then strain them out. You do wanna boil these hard because something called gelatinization happens with the starch in the potatoes, which is gonna help them get super crispy. I'm also slicing a scallion thin and dicing the shallot. The clear choice for a protein is corned beef, but I much prefer pastrami. Now, this is a multiple day project, so if curing meat doesn't sound like a fun way to spend your free time, feel free to skip ahead to the next chapter. You can just sub the store-bought stuff. But for now, let's cut back to me 3 days ago to show you how I started this. Pastrami needs to cure for at least 3 days, so right now I'm gonna make an aromatic brine with 2 liters of water, 175 grams of kosher salt, 115 grams of granulated sugar, 21 grams of pink curing salts, also known as curing salt number 1. Make sure you get number 1 and not number 2. 40 grams of brown sugar, 30 milliliters of honey, 3 chopped garlic cloves, and 4 grams of pickling spice. You can use store-bought, but I much prefer to make my own. Recipe right here. Bring this to a rolling boil for a few minutes. So pastrami is smoked, and while I do have some tricks to create actual smoke at home, I'm always looking for fun and new ways to create that flavor in food. So what I'm gonna try this time is to add into this brine this Chinese smoked tea called lapsang. Now this just has to cool down completely, and then we can pour it over our meat. You could use brisket or plate. I'm gonna go with a good old chuck here. It's very important that it stays submerged. And now this just needs to cure in the fridge for 3 days. Time to cook this. Dry the meat fully and then season it thoroughly with coarse black pepper and coarse coriander. Sear it well. Add it to a pot with water to come about 2/3 of the way up the meat. Bring the pan to a simmer and then cover it and put it in a 350-degree oven for 2.5 hours or until the meat is very tender. And putting this hash together could not be easier. You're gonna start by getting a pan nice and hot over medium heat. Add a good pour of olive oil and then everything except the scallions. And so we can get these potatoes super crispy, it's important to not stir this for a couple of minutes. But look at that result. Totally worth it in my book. Goes great with a fried egg on top. The key to making great French toast is to stop thinking about it like toast and start thinking about it like you're making a custard, because that's literally what you're doing. You're making a custard base and soaking it into bread and then cooking it until the custard is just set. It's almost like you're making a creme brulee in bread. So let's start with our custard. Into this bowl, I'm adding 300 milliliters of milk, 300 milliliters of heavy cream, 175 grams of sugar, 3 eggs, and freshly ground nutmeg. And I'm whisking this until it's fully homogeneous. And because just like any custard, the key is to set it perfectly, a very thick cut of bread is going to be helpful to cook it correctly. So I'm taking this 32% butter brioche that I cooked off yesterday, and I'm cutting it about 2 fingers wide. And now I'm going to soak this in the custard for 15 minutes. I flipped these about 8 minutes in, and they've been soaking now for 15 minutes. And I'm gonna put them on this tray to drain them. So now you have 2 options. The first is the direct approach. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees and fry one side of the toast in clarified butter until it is a perfect golden brown. And then put it into the oven for about 6 minutes until the center is very hot. The second is the reverse sear, and I usually prefer this method because I can pre-cook them, bag them up, and then throughout the week, if I ever want French toast, I can just sear them off. They're ready to go, no oven required. You'll put the entire tray into a 350 degree oven and leave it until the center is also very hot. I can bag up and refrigerate the pre-cooked French toast. And then when I want some, I just need to fry it in butter and it's ready to go. No oven required. Either way, you will have perfect French toast. Personally, my favorite way to serve French toast is with a caramelized banana, fresh fruit, and maple syrup. That's it for me. Thanks for watching, and I will see you soon.